The morning rush at Heathrow Airport felt like organized chaos. The metallic chime of announcements, rolling suitcases clicking across polished floors, coffee steam rising behind tinted glass. Amira Daniels adjusted her daughter's small pink backpack on her shoulder as they moved toward Gate 42. Her heart raced, not from the crowd but from pride. Finally a chance to start something new. She had saved for nearly a year to afford this trip. A week in New York, a small dream but hers. After years of working 2 jobs, one as a school aide and another at a bakery, Amira had promised Layla a proper holiday. Layla, 8 years old and bursting with curiosity, clung to her hand, her curls bouncing. "Mom, will we see the Statue of Liberty?" Amira smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, and maybe Central Park too, but only if we behave well on the plane, deal?" Layla grinned, nodding solemnly. "Deal." They reached the check-in counter, a sleek white desk surrounded by digital boards glowing in blue and silver. Behind it stood Stacy Wells, a tall, polished woman with a glossy bob and the air of someone who had never been told no. Her eyes flicked from Amira's worn passport to her child, then back again. "Yes?" she asked crisply. Amira smiled politely. "Good morning. We're checking in for Flight 112 to New York. Daniels. Business class." Stacy blinked. "Business class?" She tilted her head as though she hadn't heard right. "Ma'am, this is the priority lane. Economy check-in is just over there." Her tone wasn't hostile. It was worse. Dismissive. Amira hesitated, her smile faltering. I believe this is correct. I upgraded my ticket. See?" She held out the printed boarding pass. Stacy took it, glanced at the name, and forced a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I see. Well, I suppose the system doesn't lie." She turned slightly, lowering her voice to a nearby coworker. "Guess anyone can buy their way into comfort now." Her coworker laughed under her breath. Amira pretended not to hear, her chest tightening. Layla tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Mom, did we do something wrong?" "No, baby," she whispered back. "We didn't." The man behind them cleared his throat. "Could you move, please?" "Of course," Amira murmured, apologizing as she took her boarding passes and passports, ushering Layla forward. They didn't notice the tall man in line 2 spots away, watching. He wore a tailored navy suit, white shirt open at the collar, and no tie. His wrist bore an understated platinum watch, elegant, not flashy. His posture radiated quiet power, effortless, commanding. His name was Khalid Al-Rahman, CEO of Oryx Holdings, a private global investment firm with ties across aviation, banking, and infrastructure. Few recognized his face outside the business world. But those who did rarely forgot it. Khalid's assistant, Daniel Mercer, leaned toward him. "Everything all right, sir?" Khalid's gaze stayed fixed on the scene that had just unfolded. His voice was calm, measured. "Observe, Daniel. This is what arrogance looks like when it thinks no one of consequence is watching." Daniel frowned slightly, following his gaze toward the check-in counter. "Should I?" "No," Khalid said quietly. "Not yet." By the time boarding began, Amira and Layla waited patiently near the gate. Layla had fallen asleep on her mother's lap, her small head resting against the fabric of her mother's worn blazer. Stacy passed them again, this time in her pristine cabin crew uniform. Her smile was too bright, her perfume sharp. "Business boarding first," she called. Her eyes flicked briefly to Amira, then slid past her, as if she wasn't there. Khalid stepped forward when his group was called, Daniel following closely behind. But as he passed the gate scanner, his attention lingered again, on the mother and child who carried themselves with quiet grace despite the weight of 1,000 stairs. Something about it unsettled him. Maybe because he'd seen it before, that look of being tolerated rather than respected. He'd seen it as a student in London years ago, when he'd been dismissed for his accent, his name, his silence. Now he was among the most powerful men in the air. Yet prejudice still moved freely among the polite. As passengers found their seats, the hum of engines grew louder. Flight 112 to New York was ready for takeoff. But for 3 people on board, Amira, Stacy, and Khalid, This flight would never reach its intended altitude without consequence, because truth was about to take its seat at 30,000 feet. The engines roared beneath the belly of the aircraft as Flight 112 rose through a curtain of soft white clouds. Passengers settled in, laptops opening, headphones sliding on, seatbelts clicking into place. The morning sun washed the cabin in a calm golden light, warm and deceptive. For Amira Daniels, it was supposed to be a moment of peace, her first time flying business class, her first real breath after years of struggle. Layla, curled beside her, was fascinated by the clouds. "Mom," she whispered, pressing her tiny hand against the window, "it looks like we're floating on cotton." Amira smiled, brushing her daughter's curls from her forehead. "That's the sky, baby. It looks soft, but it's stronger than it seems." Behind them, Khalid Al-Rahman quietly observed the cabin. His phone was on airplane mode, but his mind wasn't. He caught the subtle glances from some passengers, the kind that traveled over expensive suits, and then stopped abruptly at Amira's modest cardigan and worn handbag. He'd seen this before, the soft cruelty of class disguised as etiquette. Stacy Wells moved down the aisle, balancing a tray of drinks. Her posture was flawless, her tone rehearsed. She poured champagne into crystal glasses, laughing lightly at a businessman's dull joke. When she reached Amira's row, her expression flickered, a quick tightening around the eyes. "Yes?" she asked flatly, without the charm she'd offered the others. Amira hesitated. "Could I please have a juice for my daughter?" "Juice?" Stacy echoed, as if the word itself was out of place among champagne flutes. "Apple or orange?" "Orange, please." Stacy nodded, then disappeared down the aisle. A few passengers nearby exchanged looks. One woman, British mid-40s, gave Amira a small sympathetic smile, but Amira pretended not to notice. She was used to these moments, the small humiliations that gathered like stones in her chest. Minutes later, Stacy returned. She leaned slightly across the aisle to hand over the cup, but her movement was sharp, careless. The plastic cup tipped, and cold orange juice splashed down Amira's blouse. Amira gasped softly, standing up instinctively. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." But Stacy had already stepped back, loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "That's why we tell parents to be careful. Drinks aren't toys, ma'am." A few people froze mid-bite. The British woman's smile vanished. Amira blinked, mortified. "It wasn't my daughter. But Stacy's tone carried on, professional and poisonous. "It's fine. Just, maybe next time try not to." Khalid stood up. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, deliberate. The kind of movement that made people turn without knowing why. Every sound in the cabin, the soft jazz from the speaker, the rustle of magazines, seemed to fade. His voice, when it came, was calm but razor-sharp. "Excuse me," he said. "Could you repeat what you just said to this passenger?" Stacy stiffened. "Sir, I was only—" "Repeat it," Khalid said again, "exactly as you said it." Her eyes flickered, nervous now. "It's nothing, sir. A misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" His tone stayed even, because from here it looked very deliberate. Amira tried to intervene, her voice trembling. "Please, sir, it's okay. Really." But Khalid turned to her, his gaze softening. "No, it's not okay. It never is when dignity is dismissed." Daniel Mercer, seated 2 rows behind, had already taken off his seatbelt. His expression was unreadable, but his phone camera was pointed downward, discreet, recording. Stacy forced a nervous laugh. "Sir, please sit down. You're disrupting service." Khalid's lips curved faintly, not in humor but disbelief. "Disrupting service? You just publicly humiliated a paying passenger and her child. And you think that isn't a disruption?" A few murmurs rose. The tech executive in seat 5C, the one who had noticed her behavior earlier, spoke up. "He's right. We all saw what happened." An elderly woman added from row 7, "She's been snide since we boarded." "I thought I was imagining." Layla pressed her face into her mother's sleeve, frightened by the attention. Amira's heart raced. Khalid's gaze flicked toward the aisle again, locking on Stacy. "What's your name?" "Stacy," she said stiffly. "Last name, Wells." He nodded once. "Miss Wells, you owe this woman an apology. Not a corporate one. A human one." Stacy's mouth opened, then closed. Her pride and panic wrestled behind her eyes. "I'll get her a napkin." "That's not an apology," Khalid said quietly. "Silence." The captain's voice crackled over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated during turbulence." But there was no turbulence. Not outside the plane. It was inside now, brewing in the aisle, standing 6'1" in a navy suit and radiating a calm that made everyone else's conscience uneasy. The flight attendant swallowed hard. "Sir, I'll inform the purser." "You'll do more than that," Khalid said, returning to his seat slowly. "Before we land, this flight will remember what dignity means." He didn't raise his voice, yet everyone heard him. Even the pilot up front paused at the silence that followed. As Khalid sat down, Daniel leaned closer. "Sir?" Khalid's eyes didn't leave the window, where the clouds glided endlessly past. "Truth," he murmured, "has altitude. And I intend to bring this one down to earth." The engines hummed steadily, but the atmosphere inside Flight 112 had shifted. It wasn't just tension now. It was awareness. Every passenger seemed to sense that something real was unfolding. Khalid Al-Rahman sat still for several minutes, his hands folded loosely, his gaze fixed on nothing. Around him, murmurs whispered through the cabin like wind through tall grass. No one knew exactly who he was yet, but they could feel it. The quiet authority, the way the crew seemed uncertain around him, the way people straightened unconsciously when he looked their way. Across the aisle, Amira Daniels was still dabbing at her blouse with the napkin Stacy had tossed toward her before disappearing behind the curtain. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced a small smile for Layla's sake. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's fine." But Khalid heard the tremor beneath her words. He exhaled slowly, then stood. Daniel, his assistant, caught the movement instantly and rose with him. "Sir, come with me," Khalid said quietly. They stepped into the aisle. Heads turned. Whispers rose. The elderly woman in row 7 crossed her hands over her lap, as if witnessing a courtroom unfold. The purser, Helen Morrow, appeared from the front cabin, professional, cautious. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said, voice steady but defensive. "Is there a problem?" "There is," Khalid replied evenly. "A passenger was humiliated by your staff. I'd like it addressed immediately." Helen blinked. "I see. We can certainly look into it after landing." "No," Khalid said, voice calm but absolute. "You'll look into it now. Before we go any further." The firmness of his tone made her hesitate. Flight crews were trained to handle angry passengers, self-important businessmen, even minor celebrities. But this was something else. This wasn't outrage. It was command. "Sir, we're mid-flight. I can't." Khalid extended a small black card toward her. She looked at it, confusion knitting her brow, until her eyes caught the embossed name in silver. RX Aviation, Executive Board, or Khalid Al-Rahman, Chief Executive Officer. Her expression changed instantly. Her voice faltered. You're with RX?" "I own RX," he corrected softly. "Including this aircraft, its operating line, and the company that trained your crew." Gasps rippled across the cabin like an echo. A businessman lowered his phone, mouth slightly open. Someone whispered, "He owns the airline." Helen's professionalism wavered. "Mr. Al-Rahman, I didn't realize." "That," Khalid said quietly, "is exactly the problem." He stepped aside, revealing Amira and her daughter behind him. "You didn't realize when your staff mocked this woman either. You didn't realize when they made her feel unwelcome for existing in a seat she paid for. You didn't realize when decency was replaced by arrogance." Stacy reappeared from the galley, her face pale. "Sir, I already explained. It was a misunderstanding." "Stop," Khalid said sharply, and she did. The single word froze her mid-sentence. He gestured toward the passengers, apologized to her. "Now." Stacy's throat tightened. "Sir." Please. Khalid's tone was soft, almost compassionate, yet it cut through her excuses like glass. An apology costs you nothing, but withholding it exposes everything about who you are. The silence stretched. Passengers watched, holding their breath. Even Layla peeked from behind her mother's arm. Finally, Stacy lowered her eyes. I'm sorry, ma'am, she said, voice thin. That was unprofessional of me. Amira's lips trembled. She managed a polite nod. Thank you. But Khalid wasn't finished. Not unprofessional, he said. Cruel. Say the right word, Miss Wells. Cruelty should never hide behind corporate language. Her voice broke. It was cruel, she whispered. I'm sorry. Khalid's expression softened slightly. Better. Growth begins where pride ends. Helen cleared her throat. Mr. Al-Rahman, I assure you this will be reported. It already is, Daniel said quietly, holding up his phone. Full video. Time-stamped, a man in the back muttered. Finally, someone said it. A woman whispered, about time. Khalid turned toward Amira again. Do you wish to continue this flight, Miss Daniels? Amira blinked, startled. Continue, if you prefer, Khalid said calmly. I can have this aircraft returned to Heathrow. You and your daughter deserve to feel safe, not watched, not pitied. Amira shook her head quickly, her humility battling the weight of the moment. No, please. I don't want trouble. I just wanted to fly. Khalid studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Then you'll fly, and you'll be treated as any person of dignity should. He turned to the purser once more. Seat 4A, he said, gesturing toward his own. Reassign it to Ms. Daniels and her daughter. Helen blinked. Sir, that's your... I'm aware. His tone remained gentle but unyielding. My seat stays where respect belongs. A murmur of awe rippled through the cabin as Amira hesitated, confused. Sir, you don't have to... I do, Khalid said, because too many people in power forget what it's for. He gestured for Daniel to assist. The assistant quietly helped Layla gather her bag and blanket, guiding them forward. The cabin seemed to hold its breath as the mother and child walked past rows of silent, watching faces. When they reached the front, Amira paused. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how to repay. By never apologizing for existing in dignity, Khalid replied softly. That will be enough. As she took her new seat, Khalid remained standing in the aisle for a moment longer, his gaze sweeping the cabin, not in anger, but in quiet reflection. To those who watched, he looked less like a man asserting power and more like someone reclaiming humanity from the machinery of pride. The plane leveled out. Outside, sunlight struck the wing in a perfect line of gold. Inside, a lesson had begun to take shape, one that would travel far beyond the clouds. The air inside Flight 112 felt different now, quieter, heavier. Even the hum of the engines seemed subdued, as if the jet itself was listening. Amira sat near the front, still trembling faintly. Layla curled beside her under a folded blanket. The attendants had retreated to the galley, whispering in low, tense voices. No one dared approach. Khalid Al-Rahman remained standing by the aisle, hands clasped behind his back. He wasn't angry anymore. That part had passed. What remained was something far more controlled, resolve. Daniel stood nearby, phone still in hand. Sir, he said softly. The purser just radioed the captain. They're saying we're causing operational disruption. Khalid didn't even glance up. Truth always disrupts the comfortable, he murmured. In the cockpit, Captain Mark Reeves adjusted his headset. Cabin, this is the flight deck, he said through the intercom. I understand there's an issue with a passenger. Can we stabilize the situation? We're mid-Atlantic. The purser's voice crackled back, uncertain. Captain, the passenger in question is Mr. Khalid Al-Rahman. There was a long pause. Reeves turned toward his co-pilot. The Khalid Al-Rahman? The co-pilot gave a low whistle. As in Oryx Aviation's owner? The guy who signed my paycheck? Reeves exhaled. Patch him through. Moments later, the intercom light pinged near Khalid's seat. Mr. Al-Rahman, this is Captain Reeves up front. I understand there's been an incident. Khalid pressed the small button beside the speaker. His tone was calm, almost conversational. "Captain, an incident did occur, one that concerns not safety but dignity. I've handled it quietly. However, I'd like to request that your senior management be notified before we land in New York." "Understood, sir," the captain replied. "Should we expect further escalation?" "That depends on whether your crew understands what service truly means," Khalid said. "And Captain." "Yes, sir. Please inform your control center that I'll be addressing this matter publicly upon arrival. No statements from the airline are to be issued until then." The intercom clicked off. The captain leaned back in silence, shaking his head. "We're about to be on every news channel in the world," he muttered. Back in the cabin, Khalid resumed his seat, now the one Amira had vacated. Daniel leaned closer. "Sir, the media team in Dubai will see this by the time we land. Should I brief them?" Khalid nodded slightly. "Tell them not to spin it. We don't manage truth, we stand beside it." Amira turned in her new seat, her voice low. "You don't have to do this. It's already over." Khalid looked up at her. "For you, maybe. But not for the thousands who've been treated the same way without witnesses." Her eyes softened. "You sound like someone who's lived it." He smiled faintly. "Every man of power has a story about the day he was powerless." A murmur moved through the cabin as passengers began to talk, quietly at first, then with growing energy. "This man's incredible," one whispered. "He gave up his seat. I can't believe the airline crew said nothing till now." Phones appeared, screens glowing. Someone had already posted a photo to social media. "Arabbillionaire defends black mother mid-flight. Demands justice at 30,000 feet." Within minutes, the Wi-Fi chatter caught fire. A journalist seated in economy started typing rapidly, glancing up with barely disguised excitement. Hashtag Flight 112 trended, before the plane even crossed the Atlantic Ridge. In the galley, Stacy sat pale and silent. Her colleague whispered, "You need to say something. This will ruin us." "I already did," she murmured. "And it wasn't enough." The purser approached. "The captain knows. Headquarters knows. You might want to prepare for a statement." Stacy swallowed, staring down at her trembling hands. "He looked at me like he could see everything I ever hid," she whispered. "Like he knew this wasn't the first time." Daniel's phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced down. "Sir, it's begun. Hashtags, news alerts, commentary." Khalid didn't look surprised. He just exhaled quietly, let it spread. Let them all see what a single act of disrespect looks like when the powerful choose not to look away. He looked toward Amira again. Her blouse still bore the faint orange stain. Layla was drawing clouds on a napkin with the free pen a fellow passenger had given her. For a moment, something in Khalid's chest stirred. Not anger, not pity, but recognition. A memory of his own mother, years ago, when she'd been turned away from a store because her accent didn't fit the neighborhood. He'd been 12. He'd vowed that day to never let silence be mistaken for acceptance. The captain's voice returned over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Due to operational review, we'll be making a short-term delay before descent into JFK. We appreciate your patience." Every passenger knew what that meant. Someone somewhere was scrambling to prepare for the storm waiting on the runway. Khalid turned to Daniel. "When we land, we'll speak with the ground director." Quietly, but clearly. Daniel nodded. "And the attendant? Let her stay," Khalid said softly. "She needs to face what she's built, not run from it." Then, almost to himself, he added, "Power isn't proved in how you punish. It's proved in what you choose to forgive." He leaned back, closed his eyes briefly, and the hum of the engines returned, steady, endless, like the calm before a reckoning. The sky over New York shimmered pale and golden as Flight 112 began its descent. Below, the city waited, unaware that, within minutes, an ordinary flight was about to become an international headline. The passengers had gone quiet again. Some pretended to read, others just stared out their windows. The mood was reverent, heavy, like people who'd witnessed something historic but didn't yet understand it. Amira held her daughter close as the wheels touched down with a sharp jolt. She turned slightly, catching Khalid's gaze across the aisle. He nodded once reassuringly, as if to say, "It's not over, but you're safe now." The pilot's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York City. Local time is 11:42 a.m. Please remain seated while the ground team assists with a brief operational review before disembarkation." That phrase, operational review, made every passenger glance up. They all knew what it meant. Something official was waiting on the tarmac. Outside, through the oval windows, black sedans and flashing airport vehicles formed a small convoy. Among them stood a group of executives in tailored suits and sunglasses, flanked by 2 airport police officers and a camera crew from World One News. Khalid's name had reached them before the plane's wheels even cooled. His corporate insignia, Orex Group, was the airline's largest private shareholder. He just embarrassed their brand in front of millions. The door opened with a hiss, the cabin filled with the scent of the runway, metal, heat, and fuel. Passengers stood, phones ready, faces tense. Stacy, the flight attendant, stood stiff by the galley, waiting to be called out. Her lip trembled. Khalid rose slowly, his gray suit immaculate, movements deliberate. He didn't rush. Every gesture carried weight, control, and grace. Daniel followed, phone in hand, already recording. When Khalid stepped into the jet bridge, the hum of airport machinery mixed with the clicks of cameras. A woman in a navy blazer, Lydia Moreau, the airline's director of global operations, stepped forward. Her professional smile wavered as she spoke. "Mr. Al-Rahman, welcome back to New York. We were informed of an unfortunate misunderstanding on board." Khalid's eyes locked on hers, calm, unreadable. "Misunderstanding," he repeated quietly. "That word has built empires and destroyed them, Ms. Moreau. Today it will decide which yours becomes." She blinked, unsure how to respond. Behind him, Amira emerged, Layla gripping her hand. The crowd of passengers followed, whispering, watching. Phones lifted, capturing every breath of the moment. The little girl's eyes widened as she saw the flashing cameras. "Mommy, why are they filming us?" Amira knelt beside her. "Because someone finally cared enough to see," she whispered. Khalid overheard. His expression softened. Briefly, a journalist stepped forward. "Mr. Al-Rahman, is it true you intervened to defend a passenger after a racial incident mid-flight?" The director tried to interject, but Khalid raised a hand slightly. "Let them ask," the reporter continued. "Was this a personal reaction or a business decision, sir?" Khalid's voice was firm. It was a human reaction, which in business should mean everything. Cameras flashed. The crowd hushed. He turned toward the airline executives now, every eye on him. "An employee humiliated a mother because of her skin," he said. The rest of the crew watched in silence. "That silence is the culture you've built. If one of my companies ever tolerated such cruelty, I would shut it down before sunset." Lydia swallowed. "Mr. Al-Rahman, He stepped closer, his voice now lower, sharper. "No excuses. You will issue a global apology. Not to me, not to your shareholders, but to that woman." He turned, gesturing toward Amira. "Right here, right now." A murmur swept through the crowd. Lydia hesitated, then nodded to the security officer beside her, who handed her a microphone. Her hands trembled as she faced the cameras. "On behalf of the airline," she began, voice thin, "we sincerely apologize to Miss Amira Grant and her daughter for the unacceptable treatment they experienced on board our flight today. The employee responsible has been suspended, and a full review." Khalid's tone cut through her words, steady and commanding. "No, Miss Moreau, not suspended, re-educated. If you remove her, she learns nothing. Have her trained to serve with empathy, not fear." Even the reporters fell silent at that. He turned toward Stacy, who had been standing frozen by the bridge door, tears now streaking her makeup. "Look at her," he said softly. "Do you understand what your silence cost her?" Stacy nodded, choking on words. "I do. I was wrong. I didn't see her as I should have." "Then begin there," Khalid said. "See her now." For the first time since the flight began, Stacy approached Amira. Her voice broke. "I'm sorry. No excuse. I saw your face and judged you before you spoke. I'll never forget this." Amira hesitated, then nodded quietly. "Change doesn't begin with words. But thank you." Khalid glanced toward the journalists again. "You can record every second of this," he said. "But understand this isn't a spectacle, it's a reminder. In our world, power means very little unless it serves those who have none." The reporter lowered her mic slowly. "Sir, are you speaking as a businessman or a human being?" Khalid looked directly into her lens. "Both, because one without the other is meaningless." As the cameras flashed, Amira and Layla were escorted to a waiting car, the airline's own executive vehicle, per Khalid's order. Stacy remained behind, visibly shaken but silent, realizing her name and face would soon circle the internet. Khalid stood alone for a moment on the tarmac, the hum of engines around him. Daniel joined him quietly. "It's going viral, sir. Millions of views already." Khalid's gaze stayed on the skyline. "Good. Let it remind them that dignity isn't negotiable." Daniel tilted his head. "You think it'll actually change something?" Khalid gave a faint smile. "The world only changes when someone with power stops pretending they can't see." He walked toward the car, the wind carrying the echo of camera shutters like distant applause. The streets of Manhattan buzzed with morning traffic. As Khalid Al-Rahman stepped from the black sedan, his presence commanding yet composed. News vans lined the curb. Reporters waved microphones, cameras capturing every step, every measured movement. Amira and Layla had been escorted ahead, safe in the back seat. Khalid watched them go, then turned to face the swarm. The full weight of his influence now visible in the sunlight, unmasked and human. Lydia Moreau and several airline executives emerged, their polished appearances doing little to hide their unease. Stacy Wells followed, head down, shoulders slumped. Khalid's voice rang clearly over the murmuring crowd. "Today is not about humiliation. It's about accountability. It's about understanding that the dignity of one human being is not subject to another's comfort, convenience, or prejudice." The reporters leaned in. "Mr. Al-Rahman," one called, "will this change airline policy permanently?" Khalid nodded slowly. "It will. Training, oversight, and culture start where leadership refuses to ignore injustice. We measure our power not by profit, but by the courage to correct wrongs." Stacy stepped forward, trembling. I understand now. I failed in my duty to serve with respect. I'm ready to be retrained, and to make amends properly." Khalid's eyes softened. "Good. A lesson without action is wasted. Remember that." The passengers who had witnessed the flight's events now gathered nearby, some crying softly, some shaking their heads in disbelief, some clapping quietly. Even the airport police officers shifted uncomfortably, realizing that no badge could shield someone from truth when power is wielded ethically. Later, in a quiet corner of the terminal, Khalid watched Amira and Layla disappear into a waiting car. Layla waved shyly. Amira mouthed a quiet thank you. Khalid exhaled, tension leaving him in slow waves. Daniel approached. "Sir, you didn't have to do all that." Khalid turned toward him, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I did. Someone needed to remind the world that justice isn't earned by wealth. It's preserved by courage. Every child who flies should know they are seen. Every mother should know she is safe from ridicule." The sound of distant camera shutters and journalists' chatter faded behind them. For Khalid, the moment wasn't about headlines or social media trends. It was about the quiet affirmation that power and morality could coexist. Truth is not a luxury, it is a responsibility. Power is not measured in profit, position, or prestige. It is measured in courage, in the willingness to confront injustice when it appears, unvarnished and unignored. Every act of humiliation left unchecked becomes a shadow over humanity. Every act of compassion, courage, and moral reckoning becomes a beacon. In this world, the mighty may hold wealth and influence, but only those who wield it ethically can transform fear into respect, prejudice into awareness, and indifference into empathy. Khalid Al-Rahman's stand was not about himself. It was about reminding the powerful that they are never above the dignity of the human spirit. And it was a lesson to everyone else that sometimes justice doesn't wait for courts or committees. It begins with one person refusing to look away. The sky above New York was wide, endless, and unafraid, and so was the truth that had flown at 30,000 feet and landed firmly in the light.